Well, welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I am so excited for another energized and ready to go episode here in Austin, Texas, where we are recording live. And you never know what's going to happen on the show. It could be random acts of violence or random hugs and acts of kindness. It could just emanate from this show. So, well, I'm so glad to have in studio with me none other than Ava's mom, Catie Sas, who is the queen of empathy. And so welcome, Mrs. Catie Sas.
What a sweet compliment.
And also here in studio is Mr. Tony Nelson. He's more in the hard as a rock camp and learns empathy through books like I do. And so welcome, Tony.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And then Mr. John Milton, he's single, so we don't know what that means. So glad to have you here, and he is also very tall and available. All right, so John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
All right, so Tony, you've been collecting questions.
Yes.
And can you give me like the context of how you've been collecting said questions?
Sure. So, well, there's two sets of questions. The first one was I've got a list of like 500 questions that have popped up over the years of me talking with Christians, non-Christians, just about hard topics and things that they've struggled with. And so I jot all those down, and I think that's fun to be able to chat about. But these specific questions that we've got today are because of, I've been very reluctant to come on this podcast. And then you and I sat down at a leadership one day, and you got me to agree to this.
How did I do that?
I don't remember how, but
Lord works in mysterious.
In a group setting, you got me to agree to come on the podcast. And when word got out, I asked people, hey, if there's a topic that you want us to chat about, send it to us. And then 23 topics came out.
Okay, so let's
from the people.
This from the people. Hey,
from the people.
This is what you wanted. We're giving you what you want, Tony.
Wait, like just you two? Do I need to know?
No, it was the context was the three of us to chat about.
Yeah, and
John is here
just because he's in that group. So
bonus content.
I was like, I can just listen the whole time if that's the thing.
No. Well,
you will speak.
You will.
Well, trust me, I definitely want to know what's going on inside your head. It's always that's the best part of the show. Okay, so Tony,
sure,
lead us with whatever question you want to hit me with.
Okay,
I'm ready.
All right, so here's one question we'll start with. So there are obvious dangers that can destroy a marriage instantly. Then there are not so obvious dangers like apathy, harsh tone, laziness, irresponsibility, pride, etc., that destroy a marriage over time. How do you deal with these little foxes that we tend to tolerate because they aren't quite as insidious as something like adultery?
Okay, this is really good. How do you deal with these little foxes? Now, little foxes is in quotes, and that means it's referring to Song of Solomon of getting the little foxes out of the garden.
The vineyard, yeah.
All right. So how do you deal with these little foxes that we tend to tolerate because they aren't quite as insidious as something like adultery?
Yep.
Maybe I'm going to ask Catie this because I'm assuming she would probably have the same opinion. But Catie, like in your marriage, do you ever just let anything go?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No.
In my marriage, no, I don't. Nothing gets let go. It's like we deal with everything head on all the time.
Beginning of marriage, I did.
How? What do you mean by that? How did you let it go?
Well, I was just intimidated by
how awesome Ryan was and his physique.
Well, it helps that he's really easy to look at, but I think early on, I was still really confused as to like what submission looked like, and so sometimes I would kind of feel like, oh well, yes, that did hurt my feelings. I didn't like the way that he just talked to me, but maybe, I don't know. I just didn't really know how to like approach that or like say, hey, I don't like how you just spoke to me. And so I wouldn't. And I would just like become more and more and more, I guess I would shrink down more and more in my marriage.
And then was there an explosion?
There was an explosion. So year two was the hardest year.
Was that like the spring
of our marriage ever? And then I just erupted with like. Then I just started talking back. I started like arguing more. It's like the whole first year, I didn't really know how to like address things that he was doing that were hurting my feelings, and so I internalized them. And then because I just kind of felt like, I don't know, maybe I do kind of suck. Like maybe I'm like, I don't know. And I just didn't know how. So second year, things just exploded, and we were at each other all the time. And I was kind of, and then over time, I kind of was like, okay, you want to fight? Then let's freaking go. And then things got really bad.
Let's dance, baby. You want to do this? All right.
Yeah, you want to raise your voice? I can freaking raise it too. And thankfully, we're a lot better at fighting now. But
a lot more rules.
well, yeah, we've gotten used to what pushes each other's buttons now. But yeah, so I can't remember what your question was again.
So did you deal with all the,
like did we
whenever
let
there's an
things
issue,
go?
does it come
so
up?
now, absolutely not. Like we do not let things go.
Right.
We address them either in the moment or as soon as we can. Like if he says something to me or like uses a tone that's like that I feel like is degrading or condescending or just rude,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, babe, that was really rude. I feel like that came off like really rude. And like I don't like accuse him of like, hey, you're being rude right now. I'm just like, hey, that was a little hurtful.
Sure.
And then we can like talk about it. And then most of the time it's like, oh, well, I felt disrespected when you said this or when you did this, or like, I don't feel like you appreciate me, or oh, well, I feel like you're insensitive. And so then we're just like kind of not like going at it anymore. Like sometimes we'll get into an argument like in front of Ava, and Ava will literally tell us, hey, you two stop talking. And she'll literally just be like, or she'll be like, Daddy, don't talk to Mommy that way. Or Mommy, don't talk to Daddy that way, or whatever. And she's kind of like, we don't intentionally ever get into arguments in front of her, but sometimes we'll just kind of go back and forth on something, and she'll kind of sense that like there's tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it's we kind of go the other route of like we have all our arguments wide open just
Yeah.
because we want to show what reconciliation looks
Yes,
like.
yes. And we always reconcile
And we
in front of
try to be
her.
empathetic. But Adrian did score a 0 on compassion on her spiritual gifts test, and apparently I'm probably pretty low too.
Yeah.
So we kind of like just tell it like it is.
So,
and
yeah.
hug it out.
I learned from my mistake of first marriage of like just rolling over and internalizing all the hurt feelings and never really. I just
You meant
cried a lot.
in this marriage because you've only had one marriage. It sounded like you said in my
Yeah.
first marriage.
Yes.
What did it did say my?
Yep.
Oh, the first.
I was like, oh.
The first
is
year of
interesting.
marriage.
First year. Okay.
In my first marriage. No, you meant your first year
Yeah.
of this marriage.
The first year of marriage when I.
Ryan might listen to this or hear about it that you're married to somebody else. That would get
say.
awkward. Like she just comes all out and just confesses everything on the podcast.
Wow.
Surprise. Yeah. No, but not anymore.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'm sort of the same way, where we just we let it fly, and I think we're way better year 12 marriage versus year 1 marriage. We've learned how to just communicate way better. But yeah, what about you?
We're on the opposite end of that. There's a lot of things that we'll let go because we give each other the benefit of the doubt that she probably didn't mean to say it in the way that I'm receiving it.
Yeah,
and vice versa.
love covers over a multitude of sins.
It does cover over a multitude of sins. And part of that is because I'm very much the guy that's like, let's go deal with this right now, right? Let's hash it out because I don't want to have to deal with it later on. Just remove this from my thought. And that caused a lot of friction because Jessica is far more sensitive than I am. And so we've learned to work with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
I'll just let it fester.
John, what about
so
you?
I have to.
How do you deal with
That's
your
fair.
own emotions? You've been working on this.
Yeah. Tough to answer. I think I'd think of as like my most recent relationship.
Yeah, but it's not necessary. So here's the thing: when it's emotions that are not dealt with, that you shove them down and you don't talk about, think about, and then all of a sudden they erupt, and then you become an emotionally delayed person, and then you become unempathetic because you don't know how to process things in the moment.
That's probably true.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're not gonna move on. We can process. Would you like to process?
Like, sure. Let's try.
Yeah, I think that's where I feel like a lot of us go, is that what happens interacting as a couple is really a product of what happens in your own head. And so because you're not able to process what just happened in a healthy way, then you either explode or stuff. And so there's two ways that are healthy to have it go is you just let it go and you don't think about it ever again.
Right. Sure.
Or you don't let it go because you know that this will cause a friction point in the
It
future.
definitely
And
does.
So therefore you go, hey, I need to talk about that. And a emotionally healthy person goes like, hey, we don't need to talk about this right now, but I can pause my emotional freak out and then talk to you about it later. And so what happens as a single person, if you don't learn to deal with your own emotions and you sort of just move on, and you just get used to heartbreak and heartache, then it kind of hardens you over time.
Oh, yeah, I'd agree to that.
Okay.
I mean, I complain to God a lot now. So
Hey, way to go and complain to God.
Yeah.
That's a new thing, right?
it's pretty new. I didn't know it was a thing until I was here last. And then...
Yeah, you're lamenting.
Yeah, lamenting.
Lamenting? What's that?
Lamenting is bringing your sorrows to God. Like, can you believe how bad this is? There's injustice in the world. God, fix it. And he's like, I will one day. And but you're bringing up the fact that things aren't right.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like complaining more than lamenting, though.
Yeah, complaining might be.
Because I'm not allowed to complain. So now that I am, I'm like, yeah, let it out.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so all right, let's get back to number. Do we have question 2? Do we kind of nail that one?
Wait.
Maybe. I mean,
You
it
just
was
got to deal with
we
it.
we really
Just
only
gotta
talked
deal
about.
with it.
Oh my gosh.
What?
just got to deal with it. So it was really how do you deal
dealt
with the
like
things?
apathy, I guess.
Yeah, so it's just how do you deal with the things that kind of destroy the marriage over time
Well, the other thing
that aren't insidious?
When you stop talking about the things that are hard, when you stop communicating with each other, then that's when you stop caring about the emotional well-being of your spouse.
You know, can I bring up the actual chunk in Song of Solomon real quick?
Please.
So this is a poetic like chunk here, but it's Song of Solomon 2, specifically verse 15 that says, "Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom." But if you kind of go back up to verse 13, where it sets the stage for what's happening in the vineyard, it says, "The fig tree ripens its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away." What we see in the Song of Solomon, this poetic scene between these two young lovers, this is before they get married, because they get married in chapter 3 or chapter 4, something like that. So this is a pre-marriage blossoming of a relationship. And these little foxes they're talking about keeping out, this is all the stuff that we do to maintain that kind of courtship phase. It's that stuff that we do to make sure the relationship goes really well and that we're enticing to one another so that the proposition of marriage is a good one. And I think that one of the biggest things that we do as men that, I guess, before marriage, we're willing to deal with this stuff. After marriage, we stop chasing away the little foxes. We stop trying to deal with all the small things that we did in the courtship process.
Right. I think you go from I want to pursue you to just stop talking.
Yeah. I got you now.
I don't want to do
You're
it.
stuck. So.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
It's just so much talking and stop. Put away the word cannon. Right. I mean, that is, I feel like that's what happens, right? There's just all this like pent up talking that somehow now you have to handle, and it used to be dispersed amongst a lot of people, and now you're having to deal with it all.
But would you rather not talk? Would you rather the other end of that where like...
Yeah, that'd be awful.
So like Jessica and I don't chat a huge, like she's the opposite of Adrian in terms
Adrian
of like chatting capacity.
Yeah.
Very different, very different. But for us, it was a lot of, we had to remain intentional in the relationship, right? It's sort of like you've always given us the advice of continue dating even after you get married. Yeah. Right? It's like that kind of, those small things that we did that caused the relationship to be good in the first place. Stop doing those things and the little foxes come back and they just destroy everything.
Yeah, for Adrian, the one thing I loved about Adrian is just how funny she is. So I do love listening to her talk, and she says the most
pretty wild
outlandish things you have ever heard. And so I kind of laugh.
Yeah.
I kind of giggle the whole, and I go, you can't say that. And many people have said, can we just like wire your house and just listen to your conversations? And I'd be like, we'd have nobody at our church anymore after that. But it's really funny and it's really wild and it's really hysterical, all the stuff that comes out of her mouth. So I do enjoy that. And I think what's nice about that is Adrian is still as interesting and funny, even probably more funny now than she was forever ago when we were dating. So I think that helps me just because I enjoy her, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you're both like growing, you're both changing. I mean, Ryan and I now are nothing at all like Ryan and I first year of marriage or even when we were dating.
Sure.
I mean, it's like you're evolving. God is transforming you and you learn more and more about each other and even your interests are changing. Your personality is being tweaked and plucked and everything. And so like there are things that Ryan and I have learned about each other in this season of life than we just wouldn't have before,
Right.
and you kind of start to fall back in love with each other because you're not going to be like in mushy gushy love with each other all the time.
No, it's exhausting.
And says the single guy.
That might be why you're single. Go on, Kate. Sorry, that was not very empathetic.
No, it's funny though.
Sorry
So I'm all right
about
with
the
it.
state of your life, and let's just sit in the misery of your singleness abyss. Okay,
Thanks.
Katie.
That's great.
You're so annoying.
So,
I think.
as you were saying, we've known each other for quite a while.
Oh my
I
gosh!
think
Like
10 years or
10
so,
years,
right?
yeah.
Because you came to the church in, 2013, 2014, something like that?
like 2012.
2012. Okay,
2012.
But
so
I
we
wasn't
came-
saved until 2013.
Okay, so you and I were both here as non-Christians
Yes.
at that time, and you got saved in 2014?
2013.
2013. Okay, so you got saved the year before me. And I remember very distinctly, I was just...
Are you going to tell the story about when you made me cry?
Katie, I was just about to say, I don't think you and I have ever sat at a table together where you have not cried. Seriously, every time I've been on the podcast, you're in tears. And every time we've been at tables together, you're in tears. This is just the first time where it hasn't been aggression toward one another tears.
It's aggression towards me.
Hilarious. Oh, yeah. I mean, but can we tell the story about when you made me
You
cry?
are welcome to tell
Yeah,
that story.
please tell
Yeah.
us. Yeah, I'll
Okay,
love to hear this.
because-
Elaborate.
Is it gonna be the
So-
same story from both of you?
No, this is a forged story
I don't,
back in the day.
It's
young
because
adults.
you were like wanting to be, I felt like you were wanting to be really stingy with the scholarships to like
Yes.
let people go to Forge.
Yes.
And I'm like I guess, queen of socialism or something, because I was like, no,
Yep.
everyone should go for free and it should just be great. And that's how you love people is you.
Yep.
And you were like, no,
Should help them
that
budget.
is not a smart thing to do. We should make people like put forth effort in order to go. And I just thought that was the rudest thing that
I know.
you could ever do. And
You're
I
great.
literally start crying
Yeah,
because
You
I'm
were a
like,
bleeding heart liberal then.
she was. She was.
Thank God
And it was
for-
really fun watching
for-
Ben Overby sit in the middle. You
reconciliation.
remember that? Watching Ben try to
sanctification
arbitrate.
is a great thing. But yeah. And I remember Katie Foster was there, and she was trying to be the mediator of
Yeah.
like, Katie, that's not what Tony's saying, and she was trying to talk me off the ledge, and I was just like, oh my gosh, why do you even go here?
I'm the worst person ever. Yeah, it's pretty great.
It was, I think you had like just become a Christian because I think you were like trying to help people with their like. Because you kept giving me like budget conversation of like, well, if you're spending $6 a month on Netflix and if you're spending whatever on Spotify and if you're doing, then maybe you could stop paying for those things so that you can afford to do. And I'm just like, I wasn't even listening.
Yep.
I was just like, you're mean.
I guess I have the problem then.
And
Yeah, and that
like,
was great.
I literally was just like, he's so mean.
Yeah,
And
I know.
this was
You
like,
know, it's awesome that you're on this podcast
this
with
was
a bunch
21.
of men. This is so great.
I think I was 2021, something. But yeah,
What year were you born?
92.
So 2014-ish?
Yeah.
Or-
I think I was like 22 or something. Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
time.
It's funny.
Anyway, I was just laughing because it's like
That is
just that
really,
revelation here.
Really
of,
funny.
All right. Are we not to move us forward because I want to be empathetic to where
Oh,
everyone's
Oh
at
my
right
gosh, Chris.
There's another one.
now. Is there?
Yeah. No, let's go to 16 real quick.
All right,
It says,
16.
what makes a strong Christian community? Whether that's a group of friends, a community group. How do you build a strong Christian community?
I think you need
Vulnerability.
vulnerability. I think so. Yeah, vulnerability.
You better have consistency
Consistency
every week.
Yeah, vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think what makes our relationship an actual relationship is that you're not just crying up here. You're here every week. You and we're having interaction consistently over time, which I think is such a huge blessing.
Yeah.
Because without that, it's just like, you know, you could have like a moment, I'm never talking to you again, but it's the keep coming back. Vulnerability, and maybe this, I think there's leadership, fellowship, vulnerability. Those are the three things, because you need the leadership to have accountability to go like, hey, where are you? What are you doing? Where are we going?
Without fellowship, you're not going to feel safe around those people in order to be vulnerable.
And vulnerable means like, that's where you get to the place of like, I'm showing you something so that you can hurt me. Or not so that you can, but I'm showing you enough of me that if you want to use this against me at some point, you could.
Right.
Because one of the ultimate goals of community, a strong community, leads to repentance.
Wow.
And so without strong community that involves fellowship, leadership, and vulnerability, repentance won't be a part of that.
Right.
That's fair.
And I think what's hard and difficult, especially in if you're talking about Christian community, is if you have non-Christians intersecting that, or Christians that are putting their toe in the water, so to speak, they don't necessarily have the same vision of that community, and it can be difficult to meet people right where they're at to experience community on the level. And so it's almost like you're saying, hey, come be a part of this, and the leader then has to show leadership, fellowship, and vulnerability to model that, so that people then repeat it. If the leader doesn't do that, then it becomes a group that sort of sits around, talks about the Bible, gets really nerdy, and then people go home and there's no life change experience. There's no confession. There's no, you came, you got information, or maybe you felt like that's the place I go to have my opinion heard, and I leave. And those are typical types of Bible small groups. It's like, I go there, I show up, I say my piece, I leave. I go there, I learn something, information transfer, and I go home. And so those are all types of Bible studies, but they're not Christian community.
Yeah.
You don't just go hang out.
Right.
You mind if I ask John something? So you're the newest one of the four of us here at the church.
It's true.
Do you view Wells Branch as a vulnerable group of people?
Oh, yeah. That was the first thing I noticed at Bible study when it came.
What do you mean?
Well, these people are sharing stuff that I could use to hurt them. I thought that immediately, which means I want to do it too.
Sharing stuff that what?
That I could use to hurt them.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? And if I do that, they could do that to me, and then there's balance. So I kept coming back.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way.
It's because you are empathetic.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
That's very
I'm
different.
like, why would you want to use something to hurt someone?
Yeah, well,
Very
welcome to the other side.
I have leverage.
Well, let me clarify that I learned this terrible skill, if you can call it that, from an ex. That notion of, if I say this, she's going to use it against me later, so I'll just shut up. And it was like, it's coming to a community that was like the panacea for that, right? It's like, if these guys are doing this, then they probably have a good track record of not doing the thing I'm used to having done to me.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, let's fill her up.
And I asked that question because I remember...
Is that for like heroin?
Yeah, that's the joke I was making about heroin use.
In other words,
Fill
I
her
love
up.
the community so much. Give me some more.
Yes.
Wow.
The community is like heroin. All right, I got it.
So I asked that question because I remember a time when, as a church, I would never have described us as vulnerable.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think it was until we took that trip up to Dallas. Do you remember this? There was a group of us, a smaller group of guys that went up to Dallas. I think it was maybe to go visit the author of the 4 Priorities. And we went to this event where it was just a bunch of men, and he was showing us how he created an environment of high vulnerability there.
Yeah.
And then we came back and tried to change a bunch of things.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Because before that, I was in several groups that were just about transfer of knowledge and things like that.
Yeah.
And things shifted over time.
Yeah. Oh, it did shift. You're right. Yeah, I'd say in fact, we now have a name for those groups. They're called, never mind. Sorry.
Were you about to say something not empathetic?
Good filter.
Yeah, sorry, that was good. All right.
They're called invulnerable.
Yeah, groups that have not moved towards that, we have a specific sort of like...
Pejorative?
No, it's not even pejorative. It's just... Never mind. It's
That's
just
good. I'm
insiders
glad we
who
can't
exist.
say it.
Yeah. Okay. So it wouldn't even be that mean, really. But it's just groups that don't share vulnerably. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't want to say the name because then if all of a sudden you hear me going, "Oh, that's one of those groups," and they're like, "We're one of those groups," and I'm like,
I
Yes.
see.
You should change that.
"Yeah." Okay. Anyway, where were we?
I don't know. Either we.
Yeah, I think we nailed that question.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
just do one more. Let's do one more because we're gonna have to
All
wrap up here.
Okay, so this one is kind of along the same lines of building relationships. But when you see someone in a group struggling or a friend struggling, and they do something that you want to rebuke or exhort, how do you approach this?
Let's ask Catie that.
Rebuke or exhort.
Yeah.
Because those are different.
They are.
Exhort
So-
would mean like, "Hey, good job. You're very empathetic."
Keep
Rebuke
doing
would be
it or
like, "Hey,
stop
you're not
doing
very
it."
empathetic." Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you do that?
Yeah. How do you approach that when it's a challenging topic?
Well, how would you rebuke someone where there's a scriptural way to rebuke?
Matthew 18 is what you're referring to, I'm assuming.
And so you would get them alone, just the two of you, and you would bring it up, and you just you have to be humble. So bringing it up in humility and I have done this poorly before and did it over the phone. I think those things should always be in person if you can. But yeah, I mean, I think what we do a lot of the times is we overthink conflict. We just anticipate that this person is going to just like hate you or reject you or think that you're trying to be holier than thou. And it's like, no, like, I just really think this is something that we should talk about. And I want to get like going in it, like inviting them in, not talking at them. Let's invite them in and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this. I want to know what you think about what just happened. I want to know what you think about what your intentions were with this. I just want to know more about where your heart is. And then talk more about it.
But I do feel like the amount, like for example, I think
you have to have relational capital.
You and I have a lot of relationship capital, so I think you can call me out on stuff without even thinking. I don't think you hate me.
No.
I think you love me because you're like.
Because if I don't,
you suck, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I do. You're like I don't feel any negativity from you in that. But I think if we didn't have that amount of relationship history, like you just like blah blah blah, I would be like I'd feel attacked.
Yeah.
But, so I think this is where discernment of. And I think because I feel so comfortable with you, it's like that might even come off unempathetic, and so that's why you have to help me out.
Yeah,
but I think that's there's two pieces of that of like discernment, right? Of I need to figure out sort of where I'm at with you, based on relationship capital, based on all of that.
Are you the best person to do the rebuking?
But I do feel like if you've been offended, you don't want to go around to like, hey, Tony, can you go tell them that they offended me, right? Whatever the thing is.
Well, because no. Like if you're just offended, then I don't think that's a reason to rebuke.
Are we talking
someone.
about like just someone has a personality quirk?
Well, so I'll give you an example. So
like if it's a sin issue.
Well, okay, I'll give you a different example. So one time in our community group, a husband made a joke where his wife was the punchline of the joke in front of the group, and I could tell she was hurt.
Right.
Right. Everybody's laughing at her though.
Yeah.
Right. It was one of those kind of situations. And so this
So you
is
talked to
easily
the husband,
one.
right?
Oh, I went and had a conversation with the husband for sure. But this is one of those times where it's like, how do you approach a topic like that? Where he clearly didn't think this was anything like he didn't think this was wrong.
Right.
Right. But I could watch from an outsider's perspective how damaging to the relationship this was.
Oh, absolutely.
So
yeah, and I think that's where you go, hey, again, depending on how much relationship you have, again, more relationship, you can go like, yo, that was a little bit harsh what you said about your wife. You probably need to go apologize to her. And then on top of that, apologize to the group. And then the person will be like, oh, bro, thanks. I didn't think it was that bad. Or he could have been like, crud, you think it was that bad?
Yeah.
Or, what are you talking about? You don't know me. Right? You never know. You could miss
And then
that
that's
one.
their own pride. Right. That's their own
absolutely it is.
crap.
But I do think what happens is we overanalyze what their response would be,
Yes.
as opposed to
Yes.
simply obey what God has called us to do. So we're so worried about the response that we don't do the initial obedience. And so therefore we live in worry as opposed to trusting God.
And another little fox enters the garden.
There you go.
Circle back.
And then
that.
exhort, just tell them.
Well, I think we need a lot more exhortation. Like I think that's
Just
where
compliment people more.
sure, and
Yeah.
I do think compliments are good. I think you want to make compliments specific and it's encouraging, especially when someone does something well. You're like, man, it's so encouraging whenever when someone says, "Hey, that was a great sermon, a great talk, that was a great whatever the thing was," and I'm super encouraged. And I used to be like, "Oh no, that's all God," and then I realized that makes people stop saying it because that's so irritating when you over spiritualize it. It's not that good. But I do want to be like, "Hey, thanks for encouraging me," because I need that. That's part of like what the body of Christ is supposed to do, is encourage one another, and it's a literal need that I have to be encouraged. So
I still remember when there was a guy that spoke at the Well
yeah,
way back in the day. And I walked up to him and I was like, "Hey, you did a great job. I really loved your sermon." And he goes, "It wasn't me, it was God."
yeah, that's so irritating.
And I was like, "This is okay.
yeah.
Okay."
Whenever usually when someone says that to me, I go, "It's not that good," but I can't help it. But
It's just like,
yeah, it's weird.
it's awkward.
Accept a compliment.
It's like
Yeah, I'm
it's
like,
false
literally
piety.
just say thank you, weirdo.
just- yeah.
Like,
It's that false
just-
humility stuff. Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, we got to wrap this up. We're going to come back next time with more of Tony's questions, and I'm looking forward to talking faith, culture, and everything in between. If you want to text us, 737-231-0605, or go to pastorplek.com, leave a message for us there. We would love to hear from you. So from our house to yours, have an awesome week.